Amazing. Well, thank you very much again. Thanks a lot for having us. So I'm Pierre-Nicolas Hurstel, and I'm here with Jenke and some special guests that will pop up during the conversation. Jenke, do you want to first introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are and what you've done?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Pierre, for having me. And thank you to all the team involved for such a great way of putting us together and sharing ideas.
Jenke, you need to turn on your video. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sorry. How do I do that? Okay, 1 second.
The bottom left, you should have bottom left of your window. You should have a turn
video.
There you
go.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'm all set now. All right, cool. I'm Jenke-Ahmed. I'm a creative director, stylist, consultant. Been working, mainly in fashion, but also in music. I was Beyonce creative director on album 4 and collaborator on many other projects. I've done different campaign for different fashion brands. I've done fashion shows and I've consulted for different entities. I've done campaign for Pepsi, for Coca-Cola as well. Voilà. So I'm from West Africa, grew up in Paris, went to university in New York, and sort of consider myself as a global citizen.
Well, thanks, Jenke. Thanks for joining. So I'm Pierre-Nicolas Hurstel. I'm CEO and co-founder of Arianee, which is a consortium building a digital identity standard for valuable goods using the blockchain. And I'm also founder and creator and curator of Foundation, which is an Instagram page and community discussing how innovation is transforming fashion and luxury towards a more sustainable future. Well, thank you also to the Fashinnovation team for putting this together. So as I said, Jenke will bring us some special guests to open the conversation when we'll get through the last part of it. Today we're gonna discuss how the relationships with brands and consumers are should or might change in the upcoming future, in line with what we are experiencing right now. Social distancing, raise of concerns, right, privacy, but also maybe an acceleration of all the things that we've seen these past years, and the raise in concern about more sustainable brands and more responsible behaviors. So after this intro, I'd like to tackle the first question, and you'll see that both Jenke and I, we will jump on each question and bring two different angles. We were excited, him and I, to do that together because we share some very strong same values and vision for the future and for the world, but we bring two very different angles. I'm more on the innovation and business side, and he's more going to bring the creative, humanistic side to the conversation. So when we look at what's going to change in the relationship between brands and consumer after what we've been through, I think there are many things that have to be different and that will be different. The first thing maybe is the difference between a transactional interaction versus a relational interaction. Many brands are working today on a one-off. I show you something, you buy something, then you take it home with you. I think there's a huge opportunity to move this towards a relation that is going to last and that is going to be built on something different than just buying. The whole move towards circularity, if you put the consumer, the product, and the brand relation in the middle of that, you can totally foresee a way of being in contact with a client, for a brand, of being in contact with a client, with a consumer, along the life of the product, helping the client and the owner take care of this product, help him make sure that it's going to last longer, and maybe when the life of this product is over, help him recycle it or resell it. And this way to embrace the relationship in a more relational and circular way versus transactional is something that is, I think, going to become extremely important even more, and we'll talk about that later, in a world where we have a very different approach to stores and to physical interactions. In line with this, there's the idea of product versus service. When we are looking at what I was just describing, this transactional relationship, it is based on, I produce something, I design it, I advertise for it, then I put it in front of you, and then you're going to buy it and use it. But what if brands could invent an economy of service around the possession of their goods, and again, be with their customers and be with their clients on a more permanent way towards the ownership of the product. So these are kind of my two takes on this question. Jenke, what's your point? How do you see relationships changing between brands and consumers in the next coming weeks and months?
Well, I'm going to use a phrase of the great Simone de Beauvoir. I was watching this documentary the other time about her life and like the impact she had on Jean-Paul Sartre, and she said something amazing. She was talking about memories, and she was talking about what is the thought, what is the main objective on buying something. And she said, l'achat d'un objet, c'est un peu l'achat d'une mémoire. So mainly a purchase of an object or a product or something, it's actually buying also a memory. So to me, when you say brands have to find alternative ways to change the relationship with what really means a transactional rapport a consumer has with a product. For me, I think brands now need to really sort of elevate the substance of what the consumer means for them. I think nowadays with what's happening, what will be really, really important is how would, as a consumer, I would feel connected to the product or the brand that I'm trying to acquire. Do the brand really understand me? It's not only about selling me a product, but it's knowing me as a person, as of how like the ad things are tracking people with only what kind of product you buy and what kind, maybe how can they influence my buying in a more substantial way. So for me, brands only have to know who the consumer are, but also their values. What are they, where are they from, what do they stand for, and I think all those elements are really, really important. I think even besides going in depth with presenting the perfect product or having an excellent customer service, for me it goes way more beyond that, because what we're noticing with this lockdown is that we're going back to fundamentals, what we really need, what really change our life. So maybe questions of productivity and questions of profit. It's like, how many proposition can we have every season? How many products can I acquire to make my life better? Maybe a more decrease, a more sustainable way of offering. For me, also brands need to stick to their identity. What is a signature? If I go to a brand, I know I'm going to this brand because of their values first, but also because of the quality of the product that they're proposing to me. You see that brands now who started, doing maybe eyewear, only footwear, are just like expanding their product offering. So all of that for me is quite important, because in Michelle Obama's book, she spoke about how she selected the designer and the brand she wore. She was so great at using at offering the platform she had to so many different kinds of artists and designers, but that throughout the world, you know, when Michelle Obama wore something, it meant something. And I was quite flabbergasted. I was very, very happy to hear that before she asked her team about it, before she actually accepted to wear a certain brand, she would, you know, not only about the beauty or the artistic technique of the artist, but she wanted to know what kind of a person is that artist? Is it someone who has value? How they treat people? How do they treat their own people? And all of that, all of those aspects had like an impact on, you know, what she would choose to wear something. And I thought that was brilliant. So for me, you know, like brand now, how to really go to their core being. Who are they? What? So for us consumer also to be able to consume in a more efficient and a more intelligent way.
Yeah, that sounds great. And, you know, well, I'll come back a little later. We'll come back on this question of how a brand can know their customers, because as you were saying, you know, knowing more their values, understanding who they are, but then how do you do that? Where do you ask these questions? Where do you store these data? And, you know, myself, I don't want to have all my values
exactly. So that's a great
stored
question,
in
because for instance,
any database, you know?
Yeah, but like for instance, why as consumer we're so reluctant to give our personal email to a brand? Because we're constantly bombarded with information we don't really care about. Like I love your brand. Seeing another celebrity wearing your brand doesn't make me want to buy your brand. So you have to stop sending me email to telling me such and such was wearing this and that. You know, I have other sorts of media to talk to educate myself on that. But I think it's also about, for me, it's about what kind of relationship do I have with you, you know? If I go out of my way to go buy, I don't know, organic, you know, cotton underwear from an organic company who cultivate they fabrics from Ethiopia and like have an organic way. So I want to develop that thing. Why do I like your company? I like your company because maybe you're utilizing artisans from a local place. Maybe those are values that I like. So it's like really engaging in a very honest, not in a marketable way, not in a profitable way, you know, because we have to remember first, if I become a florist, why did I decide to become a florist? You know, is it my love for flowers? Is it my love for well-being? But, you know, we all want to be successful because it's art and commerce, and without commerce, art can't exist. But the core, you know, it's quite a delicate moment. So I think, you know, we must, as an industry, as a community, as member of humanity, you know, come with ideas, you know, on the table to propose. So then, you know, leaders and people, decision makers, can improve, you know, the relationships between consumer and brands.
Yeah. So let's move to another part of the relationship, which is the one that happens when we meet physically in a store or somewhere else, which hasn't happened in a while and looks like it's not gonna become back to normal anytime soon. But what's your take on that? You know, what's going to change in the way we shop? Do you think it's going to be completely different? What's at stake? What do you think?
I mean, I wish I could answer that question, because I've been wondering myself, you know, what will be the future of retail, you know? But let's go back to what retails mean, you know? What does it mean for a brand to have a flagship store? It's because in that flagship store, you are able to elaborate in a very concrete way, you know, who you are, you know, from your window display to your marketing elements that you will have in the shop, you know, from your campaign affichage and all of that. So, you know, like going to buy lipstick at the Chanel store in Rue Cambon, it's a great experience because you come, the vendor tells you the story of Coco Chanel, you have a glass of champagne, you know, you just buy a $20 lipstick, but the experience you have is not the same as if you are behind your desk and like ordering that lipstick that you saw on something. So there are things that will be very difficult to replace in terms of the real experience that you have in a space. So for me, you know, with the digital, with this digital revolution we're living, which I compare a little bit to the industrial revolution. It's something completely new. So I think like now we have, you know, a huge round of creativity to dig in to come up with, you know, amazing solution. Because, for instance, myself, I'm not, unless I know product, like, you know, maybe a pair of Stan Smiths that I know I've worn all my life, I could maybe order a new color, a new thing. But in terms of new product, I'm one of those who need to see it. I need to feel the fabric, I need to try it on, I need to see how it fits on me, you know? So how do we find, you know, with technology, ways of still maintaining those experiences that we were having in the real retail space, but maybe digitally, you know? Is it that, you know, I can see myself in a silhouette, you know, just with the thing, with my mensuration? Is it like a 3D things of me? And is it something with touch I can feel and feel the fabric from, you know, all those elements will be quite interesting to explore. But, you know, it'll be really great to see where the future of, you know, concrete, you know, experience with retail will take us.
Yeah, and you know, I think digital is a lot. It's a big part of the answer, and it comes with its own issues. You know, with as we were saying earlier, we want more alignment with the brands we like. We want to share the values, but sharing means also telling more about ourselves, which we would be fine doing to have this better alignment, but we don't necessarily want to be tracked, or we don't want our data to be stored anywhere. And so if now we start, you know, trying things on and telling more and having more this relationship dematerialized, what does that mean? And how brands, you know, I think have to change. You know, when I see many commerce stores, and sometimes of very well super sustainable brands, etc., where the brand is ready to pay 15% of your first baskets for your email, and give you this discount just to get your email, and then being able to bombard you with more advertising. What does that mean? You know, where? So I think brands should question how they should align better with the values of their customer. How should they be able to interact with them in a more meaningful way, but being extremely careful about the way they manage or play with data, and the way they use marketing and direct marketing to push for consumption. Because if we, bouncing back on what you were saying, I think when there's a strong value alignment, then the desire for purchase is good. It's on time. It's when the product is needed. It's based on some strong foundations. And if you add with that the idea of a longer circular relationship that is not transactional, brands should not be afraid of not making revenue, because they have this permanent way to interact. So I think it's really, it's a kind of a shift, because this is not the way the data-oriented marketing is made now. This is not the way e-commerce strategies are built on right now. So I think the less we'll be able to shop as we used to, the more will be digital, and the more careful we will have to be, and brands will have to be, about the way they interact with us and the way they learn how to know us and please us, with, again, being aligned with their values and our values, which, you know, brings me to the last question. You know, we have about privacy. Let me just, if I can reshare that and share my screen. So yeah, so, you know, when we see, I don't know, the debate is not that high in the US, but it is definitely in Europe, and it's been in Asia, around all these apps that are popping out after COVID to track people. I think more and more people are starting to wonder, you know, how much of my data is out there, what kind of control do I have on that? And and I'm convinced that this is really going to make a big impact on brands. But that also opens a question on how do we advertise? How do we, we've been fighting, brands have been fighting to have super segmented database to push like the supposed perfect content that will make the purchase, which has also driven a certain way of building content and advertising. So what do you think about that? How can we combine meaningful content, relevant advertising that makes revenue, and privacy, value alignment, and all the things we've mentioned during this conversation?
What is your take on that? I want to hear yours. And I mean, we spoke about it earlier, but I think your point was quite interesting, and I will rebound from that. So can you tell the audience?
So, for me, if I think about my closet, I look at my closet, it's generally behind me during the Zoom meetings that I'm doing all week, but I changed the background for this one. But if I look at my closet, it is private. No one gets in my closet, but it's dumb. I don't know what has been here too long. I don't know what would have a good price on the resale market. I don't know what I should recycle because I'm not using it enough. I don't know. It's just like a dumb phone versus a smartphone, but it's private. I'm 100% convinced that no one that I haven't invited is going to show up. I would love to have more intelligence around the fashion things that I own. I would love brands to help me manage the end of life of a product. I would like all these things to happen, but I'm not willing to give up on the privacy of my home. And the more things will become digital, the less I will have my hands on where my data is, and more data I give, and the less in control I am. And I think that is just not okay. So I'd like to have a solution where we get everything from the smart digital and keeping the privacy of my closet.
Interesting. My take on that is that, first of all, I feel like the elements that brands are tracking from our behavior as consumer, I don't know if they necessarily, to me, the best way of knowing your consumer, because not only you invade a certain privacy, like you were saying, but then you subtract elements and information. I think the way you analyze it, and I think that's what really mess up the whole aspect of it. For me, I find it quite intrusive, like you're saying. Like, what will make me trust a brand and say, okay, you know what? I think you're trying to really know me, and best, I think you're trying to make my life better by proposing me products or services that will help me enjoy, my lifestyle better. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm very skeptical also about these privacy issues. I think it's really an issue. These track and analytic information being shared with different entities. But voilà. So I absolutely agree with you.
But what about content and advertising? What do you see?
This is where I want to introduce our surprise speakers. I've invited two people I wanted to share some of their insight with us. A friend of mine, his name is Florent Farinelli. He was a director at Karl Auto. He helped brands like Off-White, Jean-Baptiste Valli, Iris Van Appen, Rochas, just to name a few, with their communication and their fashion show, and also managing their collection to features in different magazine and editorial content. So he organized like amazing events during fashion weeks and special launches for great products. So I would like to invite him, and we would like to pick his brain and ask him what he thinks. Sharing is caring. So voilà. Welcome, Florent.
Yes, welcome, Florent. Thanks for joining
Hello.
us.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's
So
a
what's your take
pleasure.
on that? What's going to change? How ads and content should be built differently in the new world coming?
And
I
even more after Florent, how do you see the evolution of fashion shows or different events? Like, yeah, I would love to hear that.
actually that's why I started my own company, and now I'm not working for brands but for artists, because I think like the ambassador of a brand and like the people around the brand will have a full impact of like what the brand will where the brand want to go, what is the purpose of a brand. And actually that's why I'm just, maybe it's back to the roots, because people needs just have a pleasure to buy something. They need to reconnect to that and not to market something. It's because, oh, my friend has that, I want that, I deserve that, but it's not a real desire. And now people and even advertising that's not a real meaning that's on that. And I think the investment on brands need to focus on special project, on like video.
Like, let me
and,
jump on
and
that. Like, for instance, like brand, like something I'm just thinking about. Like, let's say brand using celebrities or artists to promote, to become the égérie or to promote their product when the artist has nothing to do with the value of their brand. You know, it's just about like pouring, oh, this actress just got an Oscar, so she'd be a great, spokesperson for the brand. So maybe all of that also, talking about sincerity and like, maybe
yeah,
an artist that has only 10,000 followers has a better connection and shares more values with the core of the brand.
yeah, that's true. It's just to be sincere, and not it's like, oh, you have 2 million followers and it's great. It's not that. It's just to reconnect to the true DNA of a brand, of like the people you want to talk with, and to talk and to sell your products. So you mean like through your communication, your advertising, or what you propose, you need to be more creative, and brands really needs to be more creative and to talk, like you can talk like whatever you want, because like you can have like so many different consumer, but just you need to be aligned of what you want and not because it's a trend. And I think that's the main work for all the brands and even artists in music. And that's the new positioning of communication, just to
Wow,
be more.
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Florent. So we have 5 minutes left, and we have a couple questions. So
Okay.
there's one for you, Jenke. So the question is, how are you pivoting with styling? The
How am
current
I?
pivoting. What is changing with styling, with the current climate, the way the business model, the ways of doing things? And the question continues. People still must want to feel good and look good, and looking good always helped with that. So what are your thoughts?
Well, a very, very good question. I'm thinking, okay, like as stylists around the world, what we do is we work with main brands, and main brands have, a collection out, whether it's a couture collection or resort collection, and we will put that on celebrity on different occasions to promote also not only the brand, but to also enhance the image of, the subject, the artist. So in my case, my way of approaching my styling work has been evolving so much throughout the years. I've always tried to giving it more substantial element to it. So for me, it's all about knowing the subject I'm working with. Not only it's not necessarily associated to the brand. For me, I like to know what the person likes to eat for breakfast. Like, what are their favorite books? What are their favorite movies? I kind of like dérouler my Proust questionnaire to know really my client. So I feel like I try always to build a very sincere and deep relationship with my client. And with now, what I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, this is a great way to really reinvent styling, you know? So maybe now it's all about custom, you know? So I think because, you know, the way it is now, I mean, for the next 2 months, if I had to do something, I would ask like, you know, specific people to create specific thing without a commercial or without a brand necessarily be behind, but more of a stylistic, you know, point of view. You know, so.
Yeah, cool. Last question, and it's for all of us. So I'll take the question and I'll answer and I'll let you continue. So would we currently share our wardrobe closet, or do we prefer to keep it completely private? So the question is for all of us. So for me, I think you got my point. I would love to be able to get digital features from my closet, but I want to keep it private. So I want a technology that keeps my things safe on my phone, privately, and that allows me from there to interact with the brands I love the way I want without having them storing my data anywhere. And I think that when I get these guarantees, then I'm happy to interact more. I'm happy to be in touch regularly. I'm happy to do a lot of things, but I need the guarantee that my privacy is respected and that my stuff is safe. That's my take.
And that I'm not being tracked for some other whatever agenda.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to have another guest, but I don't know if we have time. That will be maybe for another time.